Hi, so in this video, I'm going to be doing a breakdown of this interactive payment card animation that I did for the Lottie Top 100 Logos Reanimated Challenge. So let me quickly show you what the animation works like. And I'm going to do the full breakdown from design to animation to adding interactivity to it. So it starts with this bouncing animation to form the Mastercard logo. Then it goes into a loop. And then from this place, you can either click on either of the two circles. I'm just going to click on this. Then it transforms into a payment card. And then the payment card splits into the individual layers that make it up. If you've ever wondered what is inside the payment card that you use virtually every day, this is an animation that will essentially help you experience what that particular card is made up of. So for the first layer, you can just hover on any of these layers of the individual cards to see what the layer is, what's the name of the layer, the material it is made of, and the purpose of that particular layer. So the first one is the card's chip, and it is made of silicon, gold, or nickel. And its purpose is to securely store and process payment data for contact and contactless transactions. So that's the chip of the card. Then the next layer is this layer called the transparent overlay. So it is made up of recycled biosourced materials. So its purpose is to protect the top layer that shields the card surface and maintains durability. So I'm going to be leaving the link to this animation, its source file and everything in the description or comments of this video, so you can check it out to find out what the individual layer of the payment card is, and then find out their purpose, what they are used for, and all of those things. And the reason an animation like this is very important is because of sustainability. It has been a major topic in the global view for a while now. We are currently suffering a lot of effects of using PVC cards. These PVC plastics, rather, they are one-time use plastics that they are not biodegradable and they are not recyclable. They constitute a lot of environmental damage, and people just use them. Once the card expires, they throw them away, and this is like affecting the global environment. So Mastercard, as one of the major payment card providers in the world, are shifting towards making sustainable cards. And how do we raise awareness for this kind of sustainable cards that are good for our environment? That is why I made this particular animation. So it's an animation to show the Mastercard logo, also to show what the Mastercard product is and how it is being supported through sustainable production. You can either just hover on any of the cards to see what that particular part is, what it is made of, and when you stop hovering, it just go back to the loop. So once you're done, if you want to go back to the Mastercard logo, you can either click on this title here or the subtitle or the Mastercard letter mark or word mark, whatever it's called. So I'm just going to click on Mastercard here to go back to the Mastercard loop. So let me break down the animation now that we've seen what the whole flow of the animation is. So this animation started in Figma. Basically, I did all of the design in Figma, and that is because of these isometric layers. The cards are in an isometric layer. To do that in Adobe Illustrator would be kind of tough. It would just take quite a lot of time that I didn't have the liberty of. So how I made the isometric layer is just to make the individual layer in a flat way, in a flat perspective. Then I use the isometric plugin to put them in an isometric view. So this is the isometric plugin. You can easily find it. It's free in the Figma plugin section. And once you click on any layer, you can just click on any of these sides to make them in an isometric view. So this is the top left isometric view. I just click on this and it's going to put it exactly the way I want it, the way I have the card layers. So it's going to put it in the isometric view. So that is how I did all of the layers. I designed them in a flat way, and then I used the isometric plugin to make them into the isometric layer that you currently see over here. For the Mastercard logo itself, this one I got from this plugin called Brand Fetch, but it didn't work for me because if I separate this, there's no way I'm going to be able to animate this. So I had to recreate the Mastercard logo in After Effects. So another thing I want to say is if you check this particular layer, for example, it has depth. It's like it's in 3D view. So that is just like fake depth. What I did was to duplicate the rectangle, the major rectangle. I made it a black color and then I offset it a bit in space to just give it that depth. So it's just a normal rectangle that colored, that had given a few color of gray, and then I offset it in space to just give it that particular depth. And you can see the same thing with the top pin here, the card pin. I did exactly the same thing. So it's just a rectangle that had colored gray. I just offset it in space to give it that depth because it looks kind of flat without the depth. So I had to just add that layer to give it that depth to make it just look substantial. So that's it about the design. Most of them are just basically rectangles, curved rectangles. This is just two circles put together. And then I did this particular call out circles here. I initially wanted to use the layers for themselves for the over action. Let me just go to. So for the over action, I wanted to use the layers themselves. Instead of having the call out circles, I wanted to use the layer. So when you over the layer itself, it's going to work. But an issue I ran into doing that is that I was having, when I use the layer, although it's in isometric view to Lottie Creator and even After Effects, it still has this bounding box, this rectangle bounding box that is not in isometric view. So if you move your cursor, if I use this particular layer for interaction and over interaction, if you move your cursor into the bounding box, it activates. And to somebody that is not viewing this from the back end, from Lottie Creator, they will not understand why that was happening because the layer does not extend to this place. So that is why I had to add the, the call out circles to make a point, to pinpoint a point to activate the call out, the information card, basically. For the animation, I did the animation primarily in After Effects, and majorly because of this bounce animation, I just prefer to do it in the graph editor because it involves quite a lot of complicated moves. Let me just show you what that looks like in the graph editor. This is for the red circle. So I had to like go into really fine tune the movement because I just wanted it to be fluid, lifelike, and all of those things. Even though now with the Lottie Creators Physics Simulator, this would have been way much easier. It would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of effort, but I had to do this manually because I don't think we had access to the physics simulator in Lottie Creators of when I did this animation. So I had to do it in After Effects to get the just right, the bounce animation just right. So my intention was to assume somebody was flipping the ball from out of frame here, then it came into the frame and it bounced into position where it would be. So that was the primary reason why I did the animation in Adobe After Effects. I did the same thing for the yellow circle. So like I said, I'll be leaving the link to the source file of this animation, all of the source file. Check the description and comments of this video if you want to get the source file for this particular animation with interactivity, the animation, the design. I'll be leaving the link to everything in the comments or description of this video. So that's that about the bounce animation. And then I did this flip animation where the logos, the two circles of the logo, they merge into each other and they flip to become a payment card. So how I did that is I just did a scale animation but on the y-axis only. I did a scale animation but on the y-axis only. So I unchecked the constraint proportions so I can animate the y-axis only. So it moves from 100 to 0, then the card moves from 0 to 100 on the y-axis only. So it gives this illusion that the card is transforming into, I'm sorry, the logo is transforming into the payment card, which I think is like very smooth. I really love that particular part of the animation. It took me a while to be able to figure out how to transition from the two circles into the cards in a way that it feels seamless. So that was what I did. I unchecked constraint proportions and I did animation on the y-axis to get this. And then for this, I just did, for the individual layers of the card, I just did a position and opacity animation. So they are just position and opacity animations to move them up. Only on the y-axis also. For the position animation, it's just on the y-axis. Then I did for the title, the subtitle, and this is just a position animation on the y-axis. This is position and opacity animation on the y-axis too. So that is that. Then I did a scaling animation for the call out circles. Then I did animation. This is a scaling animation too, but it's just on a single axis. So what I did was just to parent all of the layers to the rectangle of each call out card, including the card pin, the text. So for this depth too, I used another rectangle. I made it a gray, and then I really just offset it to the left side, the left and bottom side. So to add this shadow and this 3D kind of layer to the whole layer. And I just parented everything to the main rectangle here. And I have a null that controls all of the layer. Why I added this particular null, for example, this is the card null. And if I want to move this, I can just move the null and move the whole layer without disrupting everything. So that's why I added that particular null for each of the layers of the individual, each call out card of the individual layers of the payment card. So this is just a scaling animation. I think it's just on the y-axis too, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just quickly check. Yeah, so this is the main background and the animation is just on the y-axis. It's just on the y-axis. So the same goes for all of the other layers too. The offset front, the offset back, and all of the other layers. Then at the end of the animation, I just reversed the animation we did earlier. I did a reverse animation for the individual layers of the card. I did opacity and y-axis position animation. This opacity and y-axis position animation. This just position animation. Then I did a reverse of the card turning back into the circle too. Still just y animation or a y-axis animation for position. Then after I was done, I simply just rendered my animation with the Lottie files plugin, and then I sent it to. So let me just find this card 2. So this is it. It's very easy. Just click on it. Click on render. So it renders, and then you can just open directly in Lottie Creator with the latest version of the Lottie files plugin instead of using body moving to export JSON, then importing that JSON into Lottie Creator. With the latest version of the Lottie files plugin, you can just simply click on open in Lottie Creator, and then you can add your segments and then do your interactivity in Lottie Creator. So let's move to Lottie Creator to check how we did the interactivity. So after moving to Lottie Creator, the first thing I did was just to add my segments, all of the segments that I'll be using for the animation. Although with the latest version of Lottie Creator, you can now add, what's it called? Your segments in After Effects. You are going to add them as a composition marker. And once you open in Lottie Creator, those composition markers will be automatically converted into segments. But I didn't do that for this animation because that was not available by the time I did this animation. So if you are interested in how to create composition markers in After Effects and then have them automatically be converted into Lottie Creator segments, I'm going to be making a video on that. Check the description or comments of this video for that particular video on how to create composition markers in After Effects and have them automatically be transformed into Lottie Creator segments. So after creating my segment, I just moved to state machines to start adding interactivity to my animation. So what I did was just to bring in the intro section first. So let me just play the intro section, which is this bouncing animation. So from there, I added an event and then I triggered the event on complete of this intro animation. Then I used that event as a transition to move into this pause loop. So this particular segment called pause loop, I brought it onto the timeline and then I looped it. Then I used this event that I created and triggered upon completion of this intro animation to move into the pause loop. So this is what that looks like. This happens and then it moves into the pause loop. It is very seamless because I planned the whole animation well before I actually animated and then I brought it into into Lottie Creator. So you barely even notice that there are breaks between all of these segments. For example, from this to this loop, it does not feel like there's any kind of break between them. So that is why it is important to plan your animations well before you actually bring them into Lottie Creator to add interactivity to them. Then from here, we move to the layer separate. If you click on any of these two circles here, we move to this layer separate animation. So that is where the two circles, they merge and then they split into individual layers of the payment card. So that's that for that. Then I also did the same thing I did for the intro. I trigger an event called move to idle loop. And then I use that idle loop to move to this. This is just a single frame segment, 2 frames actually, from 205 to 207. So I'm using that as a kind of global state for my animation at this point. I'm going to play it to show you what I'm talking about. So from this state, if I click on this, it moves here. So I want this to remain in this particular state. So I want it to remain in this particular state, this idle loop, until somebody hovers over any of the callout circles. So that's why I made this 2 frame segments and I use it as a kind of global state for this stage of the animation. So from here, and I use the segment I have the intro for the card and I have the outro. So let me play the intro for the chip, for example. That's the intro for the chip segment. And this is the outro for the chip segment. So to move from the layer separate to the idle loop, I created an event and then I fired that event after the layer separate segment finishes playing. Then it moves into the idle loop where it just stays in that particular position where the payment card is separated into its individual layers. And then if you hover over any of the call out circles in that particular stage of the animation, it's going to show you it's going to bring out the call out information for that particular component that you are hovering over. So let me just show you what that looks like in practice. So this is the stage I'm talking about. If you hover over this, it moves into, I'm using a Boolean to move in and out of each segment, each call out segment. So this is the first one for the chip. I'm using a boolean to move into this, and if I hover out of it, it moves back to the idle loop, and it is the same for every other of the layers of the animation. So this is acting as a global state in this particular stage of the animation. I couldn't use the default Lottie files global state because it's not going to work in this instance. So I had to make my own de facto global state, so to speak, to be able to achieve what I really wanted. So for each call out segment, what I'm just doing is I'm using a boolean to move into what's it called? So for example, this particular one now, the cheap intro, I made a boolean called cheap. So when that particular boolean is true, I'm moving into this segment where the call out segment for the cheap opens, and when it becomes false, I'm using that false to move into the outro. Then once the outro finishes playing, it fires an event that says chip to ls. That's chip to layer separated. That's just the code for ls. Chip to layer separated. So once it fires that event upon completion of the outro, then I'm using that particular event to move back into the idle loop. That's my de facto global state. So I'm using that particular event. Once it is fired by this chip outro segment, then I'm using that event that is fired to move back to the idle loop in readiness for either the user of the animation hovering over any other parts, any other segments of the payment card, or if they do not hover over any part of the animation. Let me just show you. Let's replay. So you either over any of these particular call out segments to show you what that particular segment of the card is, its purpose, the materials, and all of those things. Or you can click on these three layers, the title of the animation, the subtitle, and the Mastercard letter mark or word mark. If you click on either of these three layers, what will happen is you will move, an event is fired that will move you back into this particular segment called layers assemble. So let me just show you. I'm using this layers S and A event. So if you click on either of these layers 1, 2, 3, it will fire an event called layer S and A. So it's just making this particular event, is going to make it false. Then I'm using that to transition into this particular state. So let me just do that now so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I click on this now, it just plays that particular segment where the reverse animation of the card turning back into the Mastercard, the two circles when they are joined together, and they separate to make the Mastercard logo. Let me do it again so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I click on Mastercard, that's the reverse animation, and then they separate. Then from here, once this segment finishes playing, it fires an event that is called move to loop. Then I'm using that move to loop event that is fired to move back into this particular pause loop. So this particular segment, once it finishes playing on complete action, it fires this event, move to loop. Then I'm using that move to loop to move back. I'm using it as a transition to move back into this pause loop. So let's play that to see it in action again. So if I click on Mastercard or inside the Mastercard, it will move back. Once this completes, it fires the event, move to loop, and then the event is used to transition back into this particular loop in readiness for the user's action. So from here, the user can just do one action, click on either of these circles. Then from here, they can either hover on the segments to see what the cars are made of and all of those things, or they can click on these three layers to go back into that loop. Well, everything is just so seamless, the segments, because I've animated it that way in readiness for interaction. So designing for static or looped Lottie animation is kind of different from designing for full interactivity with something like Lottie file state machines. You have to think about your animation in terms of segments and how they are going to transition from one segment to another in a way that they feel seamless and they still work together. So that's that about the breakdown of this animation that I did for the Lottie Files Top 100 Logo Design Challenge, reanimated challenge. So if you have any questions or you want to know how anything, please drop them in the comment section. Like I said, all of the source file for this particular animation will be in the description of the animation. Check the description or comment of this particular video to get the source file for the animation, the interactivity, and all of that. So thanks for watching the video. Cheers.